Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Going Beyond Secure Remote Access with Zero Trust Network Access. Thanks for joining us. As everyone is still getting signed in, we'll just go over a few housekeeping items. Please think of questions throughout the webinar and direct them to the Q&A section. We'll be answering them throughout and at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded and we will share the recording with you shortly after we have finished. If we don't get to all your questions, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Reaching out to info@jamf.com will also get you in contact with someone at Jamf quickly. So let's get going. My name is Aaron Webb and I work in product marketing here at Jamf, focusing on our security space. I'm delighted to be here today to share with you this session as we dive into Zero Trust Network Access. We have a lot to cover here today. For those of you who might be new to ZTNA, we'll kick off with a quick overview before jumping into end user satisfaction, planning your strategy, your journey, and rounding up with future-proof infrastructure that scales. So let's get going with a quick ZTNA overview. Here on the screen is part of the Gartner definition of ZTNA. Essentially, ZTNA is a collection of principles, software, security tools and policies. Many organisations, including us here at Jamf, market a ZTNA solution, but it should be considered as a building block in your overall organisation security, not a total solution, especially if you're on a journey to manage and secure Mac or mobile in your organisation. If you remember nothing else from here on in, please take this one idea with you. The fundamental idea with ZTNA is that no trust is assumed and both users and devices should always be checked and verified before access to resources is granted. That's right, stranger danger. So let's look at the principles of ZTNA. The first element in any modern access solution is rooted in identity. The very premise is to never trust any access request until verified. Identity is that first check. Integration with your identity provider or identity access management solution is a must to ensure only valid users authenticate to the service and allow business to leverage those investments. Each application should have its own access policy. This embraces the concept of not giving users access to entire networks, thus preventing lateral movement, and by its nature enforces least privilege. I've talked a bit about identity being the core pillar of Zero Trust. Identity is the first checkpoint on access for a user, but beyond that, our customers can factor in additional context to drive a more secure access policy, such as the role of the user, their location, and most importantly, the risk level of the device looking to gain access. Context should be regularly checked, so access can be granted or revoked based on the change in risk on any device. From a manageability perspective, any implementation should make things as easy and streamlined as possible for the teams managing the solution. No on-device certificates to distribute or manage, no on-premise hardware to set up and manage, no new identities or user accounts to set up. Another key principle of Zero Trust is hiding applications from public discovery. Access is then restricted via a trust broker to customers' application and services. The broker verifies the identity, security, context and policies adherence of the specific participants and device before granting access. It can deliver traffic to the cloud service or on-prem if connected directly. Some ZTNA solutions can achieve single packet authentication, which not only means the service works incredibly fast, but a change of network between cellular and Wi-Fi or between two Wi-Fi networks won't break the user connection, creating a seamless user experience. And finally, dynamic tunnel splitting or dynamic split tunnel. It has many names. In essence, we're talking about the separation of business application traffic from general internet traffic. This gives assurances, especially in contractor or BYOD cases, that only business applications routed via Zero Trust rules and all the other network traffic either goes out direct to the internet or perhaps via your secure web gateway. Users can be happy that no personal data is routed and that organizations are happy that they don't have to manage additional backhaul of all that non-business traffic. So with that background to ZTNA, let's get rolling with our key item in this webinar, and that's how to create end user satisfaction and support ZTNA versus VPN. Firstly, I want to share a quote with you which why you'd want to consider a move or a change to ZTNA. And that quote is from Steve Jobs and grounds us on the importance of end user experience. And that's, you have to start with customer experience and work backwards to the technology. So let's bear that in mind as we move through this presentation. But before we start looking at the end user benefits of Zero Trust in more detail, it's worth considering for a moment how current solutions are affecting user experience and productivity. VPN has got a bit of a bad rep recently because it's served us well for the past 30 years or so, but in more recent times its limitations has been exposed. Many customers are familiar with the concept of a VPN and see ZTNA as the same thing with a fancy name. However, there are some differences. Traditionally, VPN provides a backdoor into the enterprise based on allowed IP addresses. The user gets connected to a network. Once you gain access to the VPN, you can move sideways, laterally to access apps, data that you shouldn't be able to access. And the second big drawback of legacy VPN is the management overhead. Hardware needs to be managed and replicated, certificates need to be managed and distributed, and managing bandwidth requirements is very costly. It's actually one of the big pain points customers have experienced during lockdown, as bandwidth across these services have been expanding massively at a high cost. Lastly is user experience, which is actually one of the biggest detractors from deploying remote access VPN, especially on mobile. VPN worked well when everyone was in the office and all resources were in the same organization's own network. Not only does tunnel establishment take some time, but bandwidth constrictions and so much traffic destined for the internet, bringing traffic into the LAN only to route back out makes no sense. When devices change network interface, 4G to Wi-Fi for example, or the screen timer kicks in, a user often has to re-establish that VPN connection. Even if a VPN addresses all your security risks, one remains: the user has to actually connect to a VPN. Often reluctant or simply lack of knowledge on how to connect to a VPN leads organizations to put their data at risk by not placing it within secured boundaries of the network to ensure that users can access the information. This has never been more true than with the cloud apps and services we're seeing today. ZTNA has many secure cloud security use cases. Most organizations choose to start with one of these four, and they start off with that VPN alternative. VPNs are inconvenient and slow for users, offer poor security, they're difficult to manage, and also organizations want to reduce or eliminate their reliance on them. And Gartner predicts by 2023, 60% of enterprises will phase out most of their remote access VPNs in favor of ZTNA. Let's move on to secure multi-cloud access. Now, securing hybrid and multi-cloud access is one of the most popular places for organizations to start their ZTNA journey. With more companies adopting cloud applications and services, 37% of them are turning to ZTNA for security and access control for their multi-cloud strategies. Let's then move on to reduced third-party risk. Most third-party users receive overprivileged access, and they are largely accessing applications using unmanaged devices, both of which introduce risks. ZTNA significantly reduces third-party risks by ensuring external users never gain access to the network and that only authorized users can access allowed applications. And finally, accelerate and mitigate integrations. With typical M&As, integration can span multiple years of organizations converge networks and deal with overlapping IPs. ZTNA reduces and simplifies time and management needs to ensure that successful M&A and provides an immediate value to the business. So with many organizations transitioning towards cloud or hybrid working environments to support work or remote work anywhere policies, having all the data come back to a central data or LAN environment before passing it back through the firewall to cloud-based service providers such as Office 365, creates a bottleneck for traffic, and that's a problem for that end user experience. However, using a zero trust model that contains a trust broker, organizations can therefore users are able to take advantage of connections that route through the broker and then directly towards the internet, with none of that latency or slow loading that compromises user experience. And being no doubt that user experience is key now. As more Generation Z, sort of those born between 1997 and 2012, enter the workplace, the devices they use, whether they are mobiles, tablets, laptops, they need to reflect the choices they have as consumers in their personal life. They have that expectation that devices just work, so keep a device as close as possible to native helps remove and deliver that familiar experience originally championed by Zero Trust MDM deployment. ZTNA provides that step further by securing applications rather than the network. So verification checks that take place between a user, device, and application move to the trusted broker. Users can now just open applications, either download them from the App Store or made available via the MDM or UEM, and they can use the device in the same way that they would a personal device. And there are many vendors in the ZTNA space that, while there are a variety of implementations of the principles, most share some of the characteristics. They normally require minimal user interaction to install and provide users with alerts to enable them to be self-remediate any issues. As the device gets closer to that out-of-that-box experience, users will feel more empowered to resolve those issues themselves. Many have grown up with the devices, they are tech savvy, and they are used to problem solving with them. So they don't want to spend time speaking to a help desk. And as an example, if I get blocked from Office 365 for not running the latest OS on my device or due to the malicious application, a service alert informing me of that issue allows me to take steps to remedy, and actually my device, once back in compliance, I could get back on and be productive. So what if a user wants to use their own device? Now, BYOD is something that people are exploring, is something that we've seen a lot of discussions around. BYOD device implementations have been contentious for IT and security teams across the energy industry, actually, for example, for a number of years. There are numerous reasons for this. Users not willing to accept a lesser device for work, or there is a refusal to carry two devices. Perhaps there is fear over what an admin can do on a managed device, and those are just a handful of user objections. I'm not even getting into this started on the IT or security objections. As organisations look at how to manage costs across the business, possibly explorating following COVID, as well as looking at providing users with choice and flexibility in their devices, BYOD is a theme that we're seeing coming up again and again. Often these devices are not managed via a UEM or an MDM, and this can create a huge problem for IT or security teams. However, organisations need to consider and define an approach to handle these devices, regardless of whether it's a single executive, a small development team, or potentially all users into the company looking to bring their own device. The move to cloud or hybrid environments has also added to this problem. Without the right control on cloud services or app users can access from any untrusted device with valid user credentials, this includes malicious actors. The key first step here is to hide the public face of these services, meaning only certain devices will be able to present for authentication. And this can be achieved in a number of ways, but IP lockdown rules remain one of the most important popular options. Here is why ZTNA comes in. Now, using that trust broker, devices will have authentication to that service, regardless of whether they are managed or BYOD. The security posture will be checked and they will initiate a connection to your cloud or on-prem services. Then they'll provide an IP address to match the rules on your cloud services, enabling users to gain access. Where a BYOD device is being used, split tunnel rules can ensure all traffic is routed appropriately. So going to that beginning sort of stance I gave about routing traffic and dividing that device so it's got that public and work use. So now we've covered that BYOD sort of model as well, because that may come up in some of your plans. Let's look at some steps and tips to plan your journey to ZTNA. Now, Zero Trust comes with its own challenges, but of course it has many, many advantages. Zero Trust implementation is not easy. Moving to a Zero Trust security model requires everyone in an organization to understand and commit to the need for verification and re-verification requests. At its best, a successful Zero Trust strategy will help ensure damage can be quickly contained and remediated when a particular user's credential, hardware device, or network service is compromised. When implemented poorly on the back end, however, Zero Trust can cause latency and a poor user experience. Gartner's recent market guide on Zero Trust Network Access outlines several things that an organisation should consider when choosing a ZTNA solution. So the first one is when you're looking at the vendor. Does the vendor require an endpoint agent to be installed? What OSs are supported? What mobile devices? How well does the agent behave in the presence of other agents? Now, also, does the solution support, or does it offer support for only web-only applications, or can legacy data centers applications gain the same security advantages? Some ZTNA products are delivered partly or wholly as a cloud-based services, and does that meet your security and residency requirements? So it's worth looking at whether these are cloud-based services or whether they actually can support any needs that you may have as an organization. Also looking at the authentication standards, like and how diverse are the vendor's entry and exit points, referred to as edge locations and or points of presence. Are they worldwide? After the user and the user's device passes authentication, does the trust broker remain resident in the data path? So looking at those data paths, how this is going to work, does it offer the right solutions for you? Then looking at that MDM UEM integration. Does the vendor actually offer UEM integration or MDM integration? How can the local agent determine the device health and security posture in these decisions? All these things to consider when you're looking at the ZTNA vendor. Now, all of these are important considerations for your enterprise as you look for a ZTNA vendor that complements your present and forward-looking goals and vision. So these are something to consider here. There's also a maturity model which provides a framework to help organizations understand how close you are to fully implementing and optimizing a Zero Trust solution. The Zero Trust security maturity model can be used to evaluate your progress towards the 5 criteria referred to as pillars. Now, these are identified and there's various different versions of this, but for this particular session, I've pulled out the first one being identity. How well does a Zero Trust implementation use a combination of factors to validate and continuously verify an identity throughout the duration of the identity's interaction with the services or data? So identity is key as one of those pillars. In terms of device, how effective is Zero Trust implementation when it comes to assessing the integrity of a networked computing devices, by providing security protections and visibility into the devices themselves? Network, how closely does Zero Trust implementation align with network segmentation and protections with the needs of application workflows? And then moving into application workload, how does this does Zero Trust architecture apply Zero Trust principles to the development and deployment of software applications by using continuous integrations and continuous deployment and security testing, that verification to each step of that process? And then finally, data. What extent does Zero Trust implementation use data-centric approach to cybersecurity that requires IT staff to identify, categorize an inventory of data assets so that they can prioritize data protection for their most critical data assets? So check out the security models. There's loads available online, but it's definitely something to look at that maturity model to see where you are on that journey. So let's move on to some of the tips. So let's start and move on to our first tip. And this comes back to that quote at the beginning of the session. It's all about the end user experience, planning for the end user and working backwards to deliver an experience for your workers, but remaining secure in that modern workplace. The second tip is to plan, to have a vision and to prioritize. The most important thing is to plan for where you want to go, have that vision about how you want to bring that whole company along with you, which takes me on to step number 2, which is about that unified approach. Often IT and InfoSec work in silo. Now, bringing these teams together for better visibility across your entire stack will only help drive forward your vision and execute your plan. So bringing IT and InfoSec together is key in this implementation. Number 4 is knowing your business and creating a culture that is security aware, making it streamlined and productive for workers. Otherwise, they will put down their work issue device and they will use something else. Something that helps them be productive but is not business appropriate or secure. And finally, automation and reducing manual efforts is going to provide a quicker response and reduce workload in both IT and InfoSec, which goes back to that point earlier around working together. So automation as much as possible to reduce that manual effort. So let's move on to our next section where we focus on organisation, IT and security team benefits. Remember when we all used to be in the office 5 days a week? It doesn't feel that long. It seems like such a long time ago, doesn't it, already? And some people are moving back into the office, but we are living in this modern workplace now where people are used to working in all different places, whether it be a cafe, whether it be from the gym or from the library. They're often on the move and they're not actually in the office based as they were 5 days a week all the time. Some businesses have already started the journey towards supporting remote working, but there are many organisations that were completely caught out by these events, trying to completely flip IT policy in the middle of a pandemic to enable people to remain productive outside of the office network. Fortunately, the concept of ZTNA existed, and organisations could lean into the principles to create a new working model for their employees. And at the heart of all this security and ZTNA solutions is that it can be added in a number of ways. With the advent of work anywhere, ZTNA goes up a layer, providing application security that is independent of the network. Access to these applications is based on least privilege, so users will only gain access to the applications they should be able to. This benefits business by stopping malicious actors both inside and outside the business from being able to access all areas. A compromised device or a set of credentials don't provide the keys to the castle. By looking at a trusted broker or the trust broker model, organizations can secure traffic to both cloud and on-prem applications and services with direct connectivity to the internet via a dedicated tunnels from the broker to a data center or virtual application. Then split tunneling of traffic to ensure user data remains private and is not streamed through the broker or via the LAN. And why both of the mentioned security benefits allow organizations to empower users to work anywhere, connect to any service, whether they are on-prem or in the cloud. The real magic of many ZTNA solutions is that they continually access the security state of the device. They're continually looking at what's going on that device, they're assessing what's happening, and that security state is constantly being checked. Asking users to re-authenticate is one possible option for security, and two-factor to authentication improve this, but there are many examples of this being possible to be compromised. By using the security of a device as a factor in the risk assessment when deciding to grant access to an application or service, organizations can actually elevate their security and reduce their exposure to risk. It could also be as simple as blocking users from business critical apps or services while they're running a vulnerable version of OS on their device. Or perhaps they've installed or sideloaded a third-party app, or maybe they've just joined a risky Wi-Fi network that is attempting man-in-the-middle attack. Organizations can weigh each risk and threat factor against user experience and business productivity, but also create policies on a per group or per app basis rather than just one size fits all approach. It's also fantastic talking about all of these benefits of ZTNA and what they bring for the security team, and it's delight that the end user will have as they get the best of their devices from the out of that box experience. But what about the poor IT teams? Nobody ever thinks about these guys. Well, ZTNA can make their life simpler too. When they get a new tool to play with, and who doesn't love a new tech tool to dive into? But simplifying how users connect to apps and services, organizations can remove issues with scalability and performance with traditional VPN infrastructure for their users. So lots of benefits there for both IT and the security teams. Managing all the hardware and infrastructure to run a VPN, or VPNs can be expensive and time consuming procedure requiring a lot of effort from the IT and security teams. It can also impact on the end user's ability to connect and stay productive when away from the office, and potentially drive tickets to the service desk teams as well. So the fact that you're not giving an end user experience that they know and love can actually increase the workload. So ZTNA provides IT teams and security teams with a centralized control to improve flexibility to secure today's highly distributed IT environments, and making the support of large numbers of remote users easier and more secure. As we move into our last section, let's focus on solutions that are future-proof and scale with you as a business. So the modern workplace has changed, and as we know, work has evolved past the infrastructures that we have in place. Here's some stats here on the screen that 4 times the amount of remote work in the last decade. 70% of workers do not sit behind a desk anymore. 85% of workloads are now in the cloud. 89% of users are willing to make salary sacrifices for a device choice. So that user experience is definitely playing a theme throughout this discussion here. And 72% of businesses are looking at zero trust solutions. Now, businesses have expanded mobile also as a work platform. So you want to think about a device as being a device. That consistent policy, consistent visibility, no matter what the end user is operating on, and no matter whether that device is personally owned or business owned. The challenges that come with managing these kind of devices across this landscape are something that we need to consider and take it across the board, whether that's BYOD, whatever device choice that the device that they want to use. We need to make sure that it's secure and consistent no matter what. So here at Jamf, we are here to help, and our ethos is to create enterprise secure solutions that are consumer simple and protect the privacy of your users. And we know now is the time to give your users the best work experience with Jamf Private Access. Jamf Private Access is the next generation VPN solution from Jamf, the company and partner that you already know and trust to manage and secure your Apple deployment. With end users in mind, we help you move past the pain and poor experience of legacy VPN solutions and use native Apple frameworks that make connections fast and battery friendly, that works with any ownership model. And the Jamf Trust app is the end user app that allows users to enable or disable private access. It's available for Mac, iOS, iPadOS, but also Android and Windows devices as well. There is a lot of detail that we could get into about the product, but here's some that I just want to highlight. So it's always ready. You can roam freely without repeatedly being prompted to reconnect to your legacy VPN. It's lightning fast remote access, purpose built for Apple, both Mac and iOS, which brings great performance, and it's easy on the battery, so you can just leave it on all day. Simple to deploy, so gone are the days of managing physical hardware certificates and complex settings. Just use our simple web app to configure private access and easily deploy it with your integration to Jamf Pro. Future-proof with full ZTNA capabilities, so private access is ready for the latest Apple operating systems the same day they are released, which means that you will never have to hold back your users or worry about updates interrupting work. And as an added bonus, you can build granular access policies with private access to begin adopting ZTNA when you are ready to evaluate your security even further. In summary, Jamf Private Access helps you solve for remote access with a modern, purpose-built VPN replacement today and enables ZTNA when you're ready tomorrow. Private Access joins our other Jamf security solutions to offer you everything you need to both manage and secure Apple in the enterprise. And we've covered a lot in this session, but in conclusion, Zero Trust Network Access is imperative for business, technology, and security teams working to protect everything as it is and as it could be. It's an ongoing journey for security professionals, but getting started begins with some simple first steps and continuing a sense of urgency and continuous iterative improvements. Here at Jamf, we have a number of resources, including technical guidance and resources to help your teams start or advance your Zero Trust journey. I'd like to thank you for listening. I hope you found some of the content useful. If you're interested, we have lots of additional content available on Zero Trust Network Acess, but it starts here with that ebook, and you can download this by scanning the QR code here on the screen. Also check out our product and solution pages on jamf.com for additional information, including a trial request, which I'll link to shortly. We've covered a lot here today. Here's a quick recap. We started off with Zero Trust Network Access overview before looking at the importance of end user experience. That's been a theme throughout the whole of this session. We dived into some tips and strategy for planning your deployment before rounding up with thoughts and products that could help you on your journey.